Hey, we're back again with another book review video. Our last two videos, the first one was Meet Me at the Museum by Anne Youngson, and the last one was When the Museum is Closed by Emmy Yagi, so be sure to check those out. And thank you so much for the 40 subscribers and the 50 followers on Instagram. I'm really starting to grow, which is super nice. So yeah. So this week we're gonna deviate a little bit from the normal books that I have been looking at, which are more fiction based and a little bit more like stories. And this week we will be looking at a poetry book titled At the Louvre. So far I've had a lot of videos about museums, museum overviews from art museums, history museums, science museums, National Gallery of Scotland, National Museum of Scotland, and the National Railway Museum, which was really cool. So hopefully you have time to go check those out. Those are on my YouTube at curiouser.and.curiouser.51 on both Instagram and YouTube. So today we're taking a look at this book At the Louvre. It doesn't have one specific author. It is poems by 100 contemporary world poets. So it has a bunch of different things in here that we're going to look at. We're going to read the blurb. It's not going to be as long as a video as the other videos, as this is a very short book and it's a different format than the other books. As always, I'm going to read the blurb to you so you get an idea of what this book is about. Of the world's great museums, the Louvre is the most encompassing, a sumptuous collection that includes not only some of the most celebrated works of art of all time, but fascinating, perplexing, splendid, and beautiful objects of all kinds, all housed in a building, itself monumental, that was once the seat of the kings of France. In the grand corridors and multiplying back rooms of the Louvre, the history of the world and the history of art and the history of how we look and think about art and its place in our lives challenge and delight us at every corner. Few other public spaces are at once so haunted and so alive. A unique collaboration between New York Review Books and the Louvre Museum, At the Louvre presents 100 poems newly commissioned exclusively for this volume by 100 of the world's most vibrant poets. They write about works from the museum's collection. They write about the museum and its history. They write about what they see and feel, and together they take us on a tour of the Louvre and its galleries like no other, one that is an irresistible feast for the ear and mind and eye. So, as you can tell from the blurb, there are a lot of things about this book that have to relate to museums, and it can be both collections and how museums can be a place of reflection. So this is why I wanted to cover this book today, because it's a very interesting take on museums and their collections. And because this book is about such a well-known museum, I also wanted to dive into it a little bit, just because it's one of, I would say, the cultural epicenters of the world. So looking at this book, you will have a chance to look at the collections and the reflections of people who have seen these collections from all around the world. And this gives you an opportunity to have your own thoughts about what you think of the collections, even if you've never been there before. I myself don't read a lot of poetry, so this is also why I wanted to look at this book, because it is one of the few poetry books that I have in my collection that I have read. And of course, obviously, because it relates to museums. So the other books that we have looked at are a little more straightforward when it comes to their connection and story to museums. They aren't as specific when it comes to certain museums, except, of course, Meet Me at the Museum is a very specific museum, but the last one was just a museum in general. This one, of course, is more a world-famous museum that people might not have seen, or a lot of people have seen, so it makes it a little bit easier to relate to and think about. It's easier to access pictures of the collection, so while you're reading, you can look up pictures of what they're talking about in the poems. And again, poetry is always up for interpretation. It never has one true meaning, as we were all taught in English class. So this is how this book differs from the rest of the books, as it's more of a reflection, self-reflection book, if you will, or a reflection on museums and their collections. As we heard in the blurb, of course, they're looking at collections, they're looking at their own thoughts and feelings about what the collections mean to them. This also, again, brings up the point of certain objects in museum collections and if they should or should not be within museums. So as I am recording this video, as of a couple days ago, a drum from a Parisian museum, a sacred drum, has recently been returned to Africa. Now, this is very big, as a lot of indigenous artifacts do not get returned. However, this is something that museums are trying to combat, and they're working together with governments from around the world to make sure that what they have in their collections is there legally, and also that it does not belong to anyone else. So of course that could be a whole nother video to talk about repatriation and decolonization, but again, we're just here to review this book. I will admit some of the poems that I have read in this book are a little difficult for me to understand what exactly they're talking about, but it still is a very good read, and it's very short. It's only 200 pages, so it takes about 2 hours to read. And again, it's one of those books you can just go back and pick and choose and look at different poems that speak to you. So I'm going to read one poem from the book just to give you a little taste, and also I really like this poem in the book because it talks about how even if you aren't at the museum and you're reading about this museum from the perspective of a poem, what you can expect. This poem is by, I apologize for pronunciation, Najwan Darwish. It's translated from Arabic by Karim James Abu Zaid. A poem about the museum. He said to me, writing a poem about a museum is almost the same as going there on your own 2 feet and staking out a spot. You'd be worn down if you were a statue, fed up with the visitors if you were a painting. You'd be sick and tired of all the people staring at you with such indifference, and of all the others who won't even throw a glance at you. Go look for the wing with the Egyptian antiquities. There's an empty sarcophagus there. Open it and lie down in it. Now you've finished your poem about the museum. I really like this poem as it kind of has a little bit of everything when it comes to discussion of museums and their collections. It also talks about the visitors. Now, the Louvre gets a lot of visitors. Like, they have a cap of how many visitors they're allowed to have daily because it can be a safety and risk for not only the people within the museum, but the collections themselves. When the line is talking about you'd be sick and tired of all the people staring at you with such indifference and of all the others who won't even throw a glance at you, in my mind, I interpreted this as people who are just going to the Louvre to say that they've gone there, not to go and to appreciate the art, but just to be like, oh, I've been to Paris, I guess I should go to the Louvre. It also jumped out to me as I recently posted a picture of my own experience at the Louvre where I saw the Venus de Milo, and from the back of the statue you can see a crowd of people not looking at the statue, but taking a picture, a selfie, or a video in front of the statue. Now, in my opinion, as I have talked a little bit about on this channel, is I believe phones should be restricted or banned in museums. As social media, and this is ironic as I am saying this, as social media becomes more prevalent in our lives, it almost seems that we are visiting places and taking videos or pictures not to appreciate what's there, but just to prove to our followers that we have been there. Now, this is also a question of safety and risk, as it is not just to do with the people around you, but the collections themselves. There have been many incidents of people tripping and falling while trying to take pictures, and it damages the artifacts around them. Because of the rise of social media and because we all now have cameras on us at all times, this would be very difficult to implement. Of course, there are some areas within museums that this is easier to implement, as it's a smaller exhibition space or a smaller gallery space, and it says no photos or videos. Currently, the room that the Mona Lisa is in has a plethora of paintings that are also within this same gallery. Now, people only really go to see the Mona Lisa and completely ignore the other paintings that are in this gallery. There's even a queue to take pictures with the Mona Lisa. Now, as a museum student, I encourage people to go and interact with objects and the collections in the museums. However, I also feel it is important that they are interacting in a meaningful way. Again, this is just an opinion. Now, I'm very passionate about this topic, as you can tell, about whether or not phones should be in museums, as I have had and seen multiple experiences with people on their phones not paying attention to the gallery around them. I have worked in a museum and people are often on their phones and they get too close to the objects and they could potentially cause harm to themselves or the object. I've also been in the Louvre when it has had so many tourists and it's very hot in the summer and people are crowded around one place, no regard for the other people around them, and they don't allow others to take pictures. It's not only just to do with phones, it's also to do with self-awareness of those around you. Again, the blurb also mentions in this book that museums are a space of reflection. So it can be hard to reflect when people are constantly taking pictures and you might or are worried about ending up in those pictures. In discussing the use of phones in museums, this brings up the question of how does this affect the people around you? If I'm standing and staring at the Mona Lisa taking a picture and I'm blocking everyone else from viewing it, that can cause issues. That could be a safety issue. So that's just my 2 cents on the whole phones in museums debacle. Now, this is not just the museum world that is having this issue. I have been to other places that have banned or restricted the use of phones, not just in the museum world, but again, in plays, musicals, ballets, operas, you are not allowed to take pictures or videos while they're performing. I've also been to a couple of concerts where they lock your phone in a bag and you are not allowed to access your phone during the whole concert. To be honest, this was one of the best concerts I went to because no one was holding their phone up so other people could not see I didn't feel like I had to take pictures or videos because I wanted to remember it, and I was just in the moment. Not saying it should be a complete and total ban of phones within museums, as this may be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for a lot of people. But I do think there is a conversation to be had about phones in museums. So back to the book at the Louvre, as that was a very long tangent, and again, could have been a whole other video, but this book is very interesting, and again, as I mentioned, unlike any other book that I have read before that relates to museums, not just because it's a poetry book, but because it offers a self-reflection of the museum itself and offers a look into the museum if you have never been there before. Now again, this will be a shorter video because this book is a short book and it is unlike any other book that I have covered so far, and also because it's not just by one author, it is by multiple authors. So I got this book, I believe, again, at Waterstones. You could probably buy it on Amazon as usual. Top & Company, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, really any bookstore near you. It does have the official, I don't know if you can see, the official Louvre label on it, so it could mean that you could also buy it at the museum. I don't know if it's there right now, but a lot of times when you see the museum's specific label or branding on a book or item, that means it's usually in their gift shop. Again, I really like this book, and trying to branch out into new genres, as I have been reading the same fantasy and fiction plots for a few years now, and I wanted to get more involved with the literature that has to do with museums. So again, this channel is about making museums less intimidating by reading one book at a time or by visiting one museum at a time. So this book can be a little intimidating, I will admit, as poetry is sometimes intimidating. Some of the poems I did not fully understand, but a lot of them, most of them, majority of them were very interesting and I did understand, and it offers a little bit of a self-reflection for those reading it. And also a deeper look and more reflective, meditative look into the museum collections at the Louvre. So this week was at the Louvre, a book of, a collection of poems by 100 contemporary world poets. Next week we'll be looking at The Art of Relevance by Nina Simon. I had to read this for a university class and it's really interesting. It's a nonfiction book, so it'll be the first of its kind on this channel, I guess. I'll bring up more points and more in depth about museum education as well as the museum industry and what I have learned and what I like about the museum industry in general. So again, thank you for the 40 subscribers on YouTube, the 50 followers on Instagram. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment, whatever you want to do so you can keep up with all the museum adventures. So thanks so much for watching, and it's at curiouser.and.curiouser.51 on both Instagram and YouTube. So thanks so much. See you next week.